everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. Today we're going to be, we're diving into Susan Cain's book, Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking.
Oh, yeah. This one's a classic.
It is, yeah. And we're going to uncover, I think, some pretty fascinating insights into introversion.
Yeah.
Really going to challenge some common assumptions about, what it means to be an introvert and extrovert and why it really matters.
Right. And I think one of the things that I think really stood out when I was revisiting this book was how it really does make you question that extrovert ideal that's so prevalent in our society.
Right.
Like we're almost bombarded with this message that to be successful, to be a leader, you got to be, outgoing, assertive, always, the life of the party.
Yeah, always on, right.
Yeah, exactly.
But King kicks off the book with this really great story about Rosa Parks. And, she was this quiet, unassuming woman. But her quiet strength really sparked a movement.
Right.
And it makes you think, do you really need to be loud and boisterous to make a difference?
Yeah. And that's what's so powerful about that story, right? It immediately challenges that assumption.
Yeah.
And then she goes on to really unpack how this whole extrovert ideal even became so ingrained in American culture.
Yeah.
And one of the key figures she highlights is Dale Carnegie.
Oh, yeah.
Who went from, being this shy farm boy to becoming this public speaking guru.
Yeah, like the original self-help kind of guy.
Exactly. And he really helped to popularize this idea that, outward personality was like the key to success.
Right. Like personality over character kind of thing. Yeah. Which is so interesting how his journey really kind of mirrored this larger societal shift.
Yeah.
It was happening in America in the early 20th century where, we went from valuing character to valuing personality. And she kind of illustrates this shift through a lot of really interesting examples, like, those old advertisements for soap or shaving cream, promising to make you more appealing.
More popular, yeah.
Yeah, more popular, yeah, exactly.
Those ads really tapped into people's insecurities about fitting in.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And then she also talks about how, this extrovert ideal really influenced things like self-help guides.
Oh, yeah.
How they kind of shifted from emphasizing things like integrity duty to obsessing over charisma and popularity.
Right, like how to win friends and influence people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's crazy to see how far back this goes and how it really permeated almost every aspect of life.
Absolutely. And it's not just, social settings, right? She talks about how, even prestigious universities like Harvard and Yale, they started favoring, these well-rounded applicants.
Right.
The extroverts.
The more outgoing ones.
Yeah, over, maybe the more intellectually focused applicants.
Right.
And then, of course, in the business world, it became all about, the salesman personality.
Yeah.
Even in roles that had nothing to do with selling anything.
Yeah, you almost became more about how well you could present yourself and network than the quality of your work.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think before we go any further, it's important to address, I think, a common misconception about introversion.
Yeah.
It's not the same as shyness, is it?
That's one of the biggest myths that Cain really tries to debunk in the book.
Right.
Shyness is really about the fear of social judgment.
Yeah.
Whereas introversion is about, needing less external stimulation to really feel comfortable and energized.
Right. It's like that internal battery.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That's to recharge.
Exactly. So, an introvert might be totally fine, giving a presentation or, leading a meeting, but they might need some quiet time alone afterwards to kind of recharge.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's not that they are antisocial or awkward in social situations.
Right.
It's just a different way of processing and responding to the world. I think I read somewhere that introverts are more sensitive to dopamine.
Yeah. That's a key difference in how their brains kind of function compared to extroverts.
Yeah.
So introverts, they thrive in environments with less external stimulation.
Right.
Whereas extroverts really crave it,
Yeah.
They get energized by all that social interaction, and they tend to be more impulsive, more comfortable with, risk-taking.
Right. Yeah. I've always kind of felt drained after I've spent a lot of time in really crowded places, even if I'm having fun,
Yeah.
And now it's oh, okay, that's why.
It's not a flaw. It's just how you're wired.
It's just how my brain is. Yeah.
Yeah. And Cain really goes into these core differences between introverts and extroverts and how they really play out in work styles, social interactions.
Yeah.
Extroverts tend to be more talkative, more assertive, comfortable with multitasking.
Right.
Whereas introverts are more thoughtful. They prefer deeper conversations and they're less driven by, external rewards.
Right. So they're the masters of deep thinking, whereas extroverts are masters of multitasking and quick action.
Right.
It's so interesting how both types have these unique strengths, but we've valued one for so long.
Exactly. And that's really where the book gets exciting.
Yeah.
It's not just about surviving, in an extroverted world,
Right.
but understanding how introverts can thrive by leveraging their unique strengths.
So tell me more about these introverted superpowers you're talking about.
Well, she highlights all these compelling examples of introverts throughout history
Yeah.
who have made, groundbreaking contributions. I mean, think about Einstein, Newton, Chopin, Spielberg, J.K. Rowling.
Wow, that's a list.
I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
And these are all, individuals whose introspective nature, their focus, their willingness to think differently really were critical to their achievements.
Yeah. It's mind-blowing when you think about all the greatest thinkers, artists, and innovators. How many were introverts? Yeah. So how did their introversion, how did that contribute to their success?
Well, I mean, think about the kind of deep thinking required to develop the theory of relativity.
Right.
Or, to craft this captivating fantasy world like in Harry Potter.
Right.
I mean, these feats really require intense focus,
Yeah.
a comfort with solitude, the ability to think outside the box.
Right.
And these are all hallmarks of introversion.
Okay, yeah.
And, Cain even uses this great anecdote about a Wall Street lawyer named Laura, who actually used her introverted traits to her advantage in this high-stakes negotiation.
A Wall Street lawyer.
Yeah.
You wouldn't typically think of that being a job for an introvert.
Right, exactly.
So how did she manage to thrive in that kind of environment?
Well, that's what's so interesting about her story.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example of how introverts can excel even in fields that seem, tailor-made for extroverts.
Right.
She used her meticulous preparation, her careful listening skills, and her quiet but firm demeanor to not only win the negotiation,
Wow.
but also earn the respect of her opponent.
So it's not about trying to become an extrovert. It's about playing to your strengths.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she also uses this really fascinating example from Harvard Business School, this subarctic survival exercise.
Oh, right.
To illustrate how valuing assertiveness over quiet expertise can actually backfire.
Right.
So in this simulation, the team that actually had the member with real-world survival knowledge ended up ignoring his advice because he wasn't the most vocal person in the group.
Oh, wow.
Right.
That's tough.
It's a tough lesson to learn.
It really highlights how our biases blind us to these valuable insights.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder if our obsession with charismatic leadership has caused us to overlook maybe some other potential more effective styles of leading.
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. And it's one that we'll explore even further in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Where we'll take a closer look at, a modern day embodiment of that extrovert ideal, Tony Robbins.
Okay, yeah.
And examine whether this high energy approach is always the best model for leadership.
Okay, I can't wait to get into that. But for now, for our listeners out there, where do you fall on that introvert-extrovert spectrum?
Yeah.
And what are your unique strengths? We'll pick up this discussion next time.
So welcome back to our deep dive into Susan Cain's Quiet.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating discussion so far.
It has. And remember, we left off talking about how Cain kind of uses Tony Robbins.
Oh, right, yeah.
Almost as like a modern day example of that extrovert ideal that we've been talking about.
Right, yeah. Tony Robbins, he's like this force of nature, right?
He is.
Always radiating energy and charisma.
I know. It's a really fascinating contrast.
Yeah.
You have this book that's championing the power of introversion, and then you have Tony Robbins.
Right.
This larger-than-life figure
Yeah.
who's just like bursting with extroverted energy.
Yeah. And Cain really doesn't hold back when she describes the full Tony Robbins experience.
No, she doesn't.
I love how she paints this vivid picture of his Unleash the Power Within seminar.
Right.
The nonstop schedule, the dancing, the chanting, the firewalk.
Oh, yeah, the firewalk.
The firewalk, yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a powerful symbol
Yeah,
of what Robbins represents, right?
it is.
It's pushing past your fears, taking action.
Embracing this almost superhuman level of energy.
Right. And it's hard to deny. I mean, he's helped millions of people.
He has.
Even world leaders, right?
Right,
It's
yeah.
a massive empire he's built around this idea of personal empowerment.
He has.
But I think Cain subtly raises this really thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
Is this type of leadership, this constant upselling, this focus on action over contemplation. Like, is it always the right approach?
Right.
Is it always the most effective way to empower people?
Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting, I think.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, you can sense that Robbins genuinely believes in his message.
Right.
It's not just some slick salesman trying to make a buck, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there is this constant pressure to like buy more, upgrade to the next level.
Right.
It can feel a bit relentless.
Yeah. I see what you mean.
Especially for introverts who may not thrive in that kind of high energy environment.
Right. Yeah. It's like this never-ending cycle of self-improvement
Yeah,
that can feel, overwhelming.
totally.
Yeah.
And this kind of brings us to another really fascinating setting that Cain explores in the book,
Okay.
which is Harvard Business School.
Okay. HBS. Yeah.
A place that seems to epitomize that extrovert ideal.
Right. Like the breeding ground for CEOs and world leaders.
Exactly.
Yeah. You would think it would be challenging
Oh, yeah.
for anyone who doesn't fit that mold.
Right. And she captures this pressure cooker culture of HBS
Yeah.
really well through the eyes of this introverted student named Don Chen,
Mm.
who feels this constant pressure to participate,
Right.
to socialize, to network,
Yeah.
to essentially be on all the time.
It sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
It's not just attending classes, is it?
No,
I mean, there's like the happy hours, the dinners, the networking events.
it's a 247 performance.
Right. Yeah, it's a performance of extroversion.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine it would be easy to feel lost in that kind of environment
Oh, yeah,
if you weren't naturally outgoing.
absolutely. And what's interesting is they don't like explicitly tell students you have to be an extrovert.
Right.
It's more like this unspoken rule, this
Yeah.
underlying message that if you want to succeed here,
Yeah.
you better be comfortable speaking up, taking risks, putting yourself out there.
It's like the whole system is set up to reward those who are more outgoing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
From the grading to the social hierarchy.
So for someone like Don, it must feel like a constant uphill battle.
Absolutely. But here's what's fascinating. Even within this bastion of extroversion,
Yeah.
Cain finds these subtle cracks in the facade.
Oh, really? Like it, what?
Well, one of the most telling examples is actually that same subarctic survival exercise
Right.
that we talked about earlier. Remember
Yes.
how the team that had the member with the real world survival knowledge
Yeah.
ended up ignoring him
Right.
because he wasn't the most assertive person.
Yeah. It was a powerful example
Right.
of how that valuing assertiveness over quiet expertise can lead to bad decisions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder if this plays out in the real world all the time.
Right. I mean, think about corporate mergers.
Yeah.
Political negotiations.
Jury deliberations.
Right. If the loudest voices are always dominating,
Yeah.
are we really making the best decisions?
That's a great question. And it really makes you question whether our society's obsession with charismatic leaders
Yeah.
has blinded us to other, maybe more effective styles of leadership.
Right. So what if the leaders who are best equipped to handle this complexity are the ones who are more introspective,
Yeah.
more deliberate, more willing to listen before acting?
Right. It's a really intriguing idea.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what stands out to you about the Tony Robbins phenomenon
Yeah.
and the culture at HBS?
Yeah.
How do those examples make you think about this whole connection between charisma and leadership?
So we're back, still deep diving into quiet with Susan Cain.
It's been a really, really interesting journey, hasn't it? Exploring this whole extrovert ideal thing.
It has, yeah, how it shapes like everything, success, leadership.
How we see the world, really.
Huh.
But I'm curious, what do we do with all this?
Yeah, good question. I mean, Cain's book, it's not just about, understanding introversion.
Right,
It's
yeah.
like, it's a call to action almost.
It is to create a world that values all kinds of minds. And I think recognizing that bias is step one.
Yeah, that unconscious bias towards extroversion that's everywhere.
Everywhere, schools, workplaces, even just hanging out with friends.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's the right way to be, got to be outgoing to be happy.
I've felt that for sure. Even just casual stuff. Like, you got to be the life of the party, cracking jokes.
And if you're not.
Too quiet, shy, like it's a bad thing.
And for introverts, that's tough. They start believing it themselves.
Like their nature's a problem.
Yeah.
But it's not, right? It's
Yeah.
just different.
Exactly. Introversion, extroversion, just different ways of being. Neither better. Like comparing apples and oranges.
Oh, I like that. Both fruit, but totally different. What if we design things around that?
Right. Imagine workplaces with like open spaces and quiet zones.
Oh, yeah.
Schools where not everything's a huge class. Some kids need small groups.
Options, flexibility, everyone finds their spot to shine.
That's it. And that goes for leadership, too. We're so stuck on charisma equals leader.
But what if it's more than that?
What if the best leaders are also the best listeners? Thoughtful, careful, let others take the lead sometimes.
Instead of just whoever's loudest wins, true leadership is knowing when to speak, when to shut up.
That's it. Cain's book, it's like permission to be yourself, don't force it.
Right. Don't gotta be the party animal if you're not wired that way.
Your power comes from knowing your strengths, whatever they are.
Yeah.
Introvert, extrovert, doesn't matter.
This whole conversation's been eye-opening. I see things differently now.
I'm so glad to hear that. And as we wrap this up, I got to leave you with one last thought. What if? We're all kind of ambiverts.
Ambiverts.
Yeah, like in between, not totally one or the other.
Oh, makes sense. Blend of both depends on the situation.
Exactly. It's recognizing that complexity, then using all our strengths.
So powerful, like permission to be your full self.
That's it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into quiet.
And remember, the world needs all kinds of minds. Keep exploring, questioning, be you. Until next time.